You've reached the Signal Watch, movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is...
Oh, I'm supposed to say my name. Nathan Cohn.
You're supposed to say your name. Yeah, you're Nathan Cohn. Welcome back to the Signal Watch. It's been a good long while.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm sorry it's been so long, but I'm happy to talk to you about another great Disney movie that I love.
Well, this one is way outside the bounds of the normal Disney programming. It's one of the fascinating things to me, honestly, about the Disney Plus service. If you don't have it and you were expecting the Disney Plus service to just have like Fox and the Hound and Mary Poppins, I'm pleased to say there's lots of documentaries, there's all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff for Disney, and then there's this gem that I was completely shocked to see pop up on there.
Well, and it wasn't up on the Disney Plus service at first, and there are a lot of Disney titles from the past that fans are still waiting for, everything from The Watcher in the Woods to something we've talked about before, Something Wicked This Way Comes, which are not on Disney Plus. But this movie, a David Lynch film from 1999, The Straight Story, is on Disney Plus, and it just appeared there this late spring or summer, I believe. So a lot of people, including me, were excited to see it there. And actually, to tell the truth, I had not seen The Straight Story when it came out in 1999. So this was a great opportunity for me to finally get to see this movie.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it either. I remember it getting very, very good reviews when it came out, and I remembered the lead performer from it getting nominated. But, you know, I had seen that... I'm a David Lynch fan, but, you know, it wasn't Twin Peaks, and it wasn't, you know, kind of in that milieu. And I was like, well, you know, I'll catch it at some point on home video, and I did not. So... when you suggested it for a podcast, I jumped on it with both feet. It seemed like a great opportunity to watch it.
Well, one of the things that I loved about this movie when I started watching it, and let me just briefly summarize the plot of it, that it is about a 70-something-year-old man, Alvin Straight, a 73-year-old man, played by 79-year-old Richard Farnsworth, who, upon learning that his older brother had a stroke and lives one state away, decides to get on a riding lawnmower and travel the 300-plus miles to see him. His brother and he had a falling out some 7-8 years ago, and he feels that it's just this time in his life when he needs to go see him and, I don't know, make amends. You don't exactly know what's going to go on, but he just says he wants to see the stars with him like he did when they were young. And one of the things that I noticed right away about this film when I watched it is that immediately it does feel like a David Lynch film. It opens in small town America in sort of an inverse to Blue Velvet, a really different look at small town America. But The Straight Story has these wonderful, beautiful aerial shots of wheat fields and the town in Iowa that Alvin Straight lives in, and it just gorgeously sets up the setting and the place, and also has kind of a dreamlike quality to it in the lighting and the way the camera moves in these opening scenes of the film. You really feel like this is a David Lynch movie.
The thing that really struck me, because, you know, in the intervening years, Twin Peaks: The Return came out and was released to Showtime. And if you've not seen it, I highly recommend. But do watch the entirety of Twin Peaks and Fire Walk with Me first. But when I was watching this, I really feel like David Lynch opened up in a way I understood Twin Peaks: The Return maybe more by watching this. It felt, those two felt like the straight story, in that it felt like, especially some of the early chapters of Twin Peaks: The Return, it felt like it informed some of that, of just kind of exploring the openness of this area. And there were just sequences, especially just right at the very beginning, where the neighbor kind of doesn't hear what's going on in the house next door, which we also can't see. And that's kind of, I don't know if that's classic David Lynch, but it's certainly what I think of him now. Of, something has occurred and he creates this sense of anxiety in the viewer because someone on screen isn't reacting to the thing where you're like, deal with the emergency, which I remember him doing as far back as the season opener, I think, of Twin Peaks season 2. But it's his ability to really get into characters without them ever explicitly, I'm not going to say they don't monologue, but they also don't just deliver information in packets. They genuinely feel like they're talking to each other. And that's something I find remarkable about this film is kind of the ease of communication that he's able to pull between these characters, even though it is, sometimes a little dreamy and a little off kilter. You immediately get connections with each of these characters as he kind of meets them as he goes along.
Well, and, the off-kilterness of it, too, is something that we all are a little bit, really, because I think one of the things that Lynch is doing in his films is he looks at people and sees the off-kilterness and embraces that and loves that. And he invites us to do that as well, not in any sort of mocking way, but in just acknowledging that that's a part of us. And that's another thing that I loved about this movie, too, is that you can really tell how much Lynch loves these people that are in the movie and all the people that are in his films as well. It's something that John Roach, the screenwriter, talked to me about, and we'll hear from him a little bit later on in today's podcast. But Lynch really does love the people and feels great empathy for those that are on screen.
Yeah, I mean, one of the characters that I don't remember reading much about when the film initially came out, I remembered reading Sissy Spacek played his daughter, Richard Farnsworth's daughter. But, Spacek's a great actor. And that is in every frame she's in during the course of the movie. She's clearly, not wired like everybody else, but it's not played at any time for laughs. It's played as, okay, this is how these two relate to each other. And the character's endearing and just really well done.
And in that way, I think the film really does fit in with the whole Disney mode, because there are a lot of live action movies over the course of Disney's history going all the way back into the 1950s that do have great feeling for the characters that are on screen, the people that are on screen and their humanity. I mean, let's face it, Disney's done a lot of junk as well. We're looking at you, Gus. But there's a lot of those stories, and I'm thinking of the human stories, a lot of their inspirational movies where clearly the producers of the movie really do embrace the fullness of a person on screen.
Yeah. This film, again, it's G-rated, which for a David Lynch film feels like some sort of amazing stunt. And that's the thing that I would really want to tell people the film is not a stunt, and I don't think any of the David Lynch films are. But making a G film is not him doing some trick to do something else that he's doesn't normally do. And I don't really know what I expected before I watched the movie, but I definitely had some like, oh, they're going to do some kind of cutesy stories of, some guy on a road trip, and it's G-rated, and it's a guy on a tractor heading across the country, and the misadventures he has, and it, they're throwing laurels at it because it's a cute movie about an old guy, and David Lynch did it, so it hits lots of check marks that might appeal to Academy voters. But that's not what it is. Even when it is what it is, I think it's really introspective, and like you said, cares a lot about the characters and cares a lot about how those characters relate to each other, to a point where you're able to understand them and relate to them, even though they're very different from, suburbanites like myself. So, well, yeah. Go ahead.
Even the lady who hits the deer on the road. At one point, Alvin is driving along this road, and a woman has pulled past him in her car and hits a deer and kills the deer. And she gets out of the car. She's terribly upset that she hit the deer, and she's almost borderline going into histrionics about it, because this is a road that she has to travel along, and she loves deer, and why does she hit the deer? Where do they come from? And she's just terribly upset by this. And you think, okay, this is going to, because you're thinking about David Lynch, you think, okay, this is going to veer into some sort of really weird territory here, but it never does. The kookiest thing that happens from it is Alvin sees the deer after she leaves, and has some venison for dinner that night, and then takes the antlers and decorates his trailer with them. But you feel for the woman, her troubles, and in that short picture of her, you know who this woman is. And I want to say something else a moment ago about David Lynch and about what he does with his movies. With the exception of this and The Elephant Man, a lot of his movies can get really, really, can be violent and feature depraved characters, and so people think of Lost Highway and Twin Peaks and stuff like that. But I came across an interview with David Lynch in Scouting magazine from a few years ago, and David Lynch was an Eagle Scout. It's in his Twitter bio that he was an Eagle Scout, and he's talked about how the reason why that's in his Twitter bio is it's for his dad. His dad really wanted him to push through and make it all the way to Eagle. But Lynch said in this interview, he says, films reflect our world, ideas come from our world is filled with characters that don't reflect scouting values for sure, and stories are not all just shiny little pleasant tales. They involve all kinds of different characters, all different kinds of thinking. That's what makes a story. And then the article says, furthermore, Lynch cautions against assuming that someone who creates unstable characters is an unstable person. And he says, I always say the artist doesn't have to suffer to show suffering. You want to be happy in your work, but you can tell stories that have darkness swimming along with light, have the suffering on the screen or in the books, not in your life.
That's very interesting. And I think that, people have some assumptions about David Lynch, about, what kind of person he might, I don't think anyone thinks he's depraved, or maybe people do think he's depraved, but they don't think of him as being any kind of psychopath, but he definitely has some insight. And I think seeing that in this film, maybe a little bit less of the darkness being a polar reflection of the light, but you can certainly see that in his work, and even within individual characters. When you were talking about the deer scene, the first thing I thought of when I was watching the movie was there's a scene with Sherilyn Fenn in Wild at Heart, where she's on the side of the road and she's going to pass. She's been in an accident and doesn't even realize she's been injured. And there's all kinds of stuff with the characters in that film and kind of what they're reaching for. This movie, I think, deals less with it deals with the darkness that some of these characters have carried with them in some very surprising ways, and kind of the traumas that they've lived through, and that they're still able to carry on, and the traumas they know that they've inflicted on other people. All of which was surprising, needless to say, in a G movie, which, you know, I don't even know how you get a G movie where a beer appears. He stops and drinks a beer at one point.
Well, my kids noticed that there's a lot of smoking in the movie. They said, "Why is everybody smoking in this movie?" Oh, that's the other David Lynch thing.
But it deals with, you know, kind of the trauma, and without getting into gory detail of you know, this past life that our lead character has led, and why he feels kind of this need for redemption.
World War II veteran. He had trouble with alcohol. That's obviously what led to the conflict with his brother at one point. Yeah, those traumas.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily, I don't remember specifically him saying anything that happened with the mother of Sissy Spacek. I know she passed in 82, and this takes place in the 90s or early 90s. But you just kind of, you know, what was the relationship there? Where are the rest of the siblings? You know, all that kind of stuff. But he's definitely trying to make up for something, and in his kind of passage to do good things more or less happen along the way. He finds a lot of human kindness on the road.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I really enjoyed too, is that it's kind of like an odyssey, right? The Entertainment Weekly critic, when this came out, described it as like a one-man band version of the Odyssey as daydreamed by Norman Rockwell, where he goes through all these different encounters with people, and it's all and they all deliver kindness back to him. You know, starting with a teenager who is pregnant and is a potential runaway, followed by some bikers along the road, and then the woman who hits the deer, and then a middle-aged couple who take him in when his lawnmower breaks, and then you know, they kind of help him out, and there's a little comedy there with two brothers that bicker and work on his lawnmower, and then the priest who almost, you know, is it like kind of almost an absolution that he's having before he makes this final journey to his brother? I don't know. Well, that's another one of the things that I observed when I was talking to John Roach, is that along the way, this seems to be like almost it's not, the Via Dolorosa is not the right complete metaphor to use, but he's making a journey, and he's going through these steps in a process that lead him closer to his brother and closer to his own end that he knows is coming as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the interview. I got a chance to listen to it, and it gave me a lot of insight into the film. And it's of course always fascinating to hear how anything actually goes from, we had a nugget of an idea, and next thing we knew, it's, you know, getting lauded by critics, and it's hitting screens and making some money. Maybe now's a good time to introduce the interview.
Okay, well, let's do that. Earlier this summer, I had a chance to talk to John Roach, one of the screenwriters of The Straight Story. I Googled him after I watched the movie, and I said, I wonder if I could talk to this guy, and sent off an email, and he took me up on it. So here's that interview. I understand that you and your co-writer, Mary Sweeney, had been friends since childhood. Is that correct? And that you had always wanted to write something together?
We both went to Blessed Sacrament grade school, and my last name is Roach, and her last name is Sweeney, which means we sat together, the R's and S's, for 8 years, and we were also family friends. So our parents knew each other. Madison at that time wasn't a very big town. So we were friends both through grade school and high school, and we both kind of went in a similar direction after high school. I stayed in Madison, went to the University of Wisconsin. Mary attended Wisconsin, then went out to New York to the New York Film School. And and then we just kept track of each other in our careers. And she visited me on set while I was doing television production in Chicago, and I visited her on set out west. I traveled a lot and shot in Hollywood a lot. And so we just stayed in touch, and we kind of compared the industries we're in, and it was kind of fun.
Did y'all, through staying in touch, was this something that y'all had always talked about, saying, oh gosh, we'd love to work together?
You know, it never really got to that point until 1998. Mary had an illustrious career as an editor. She was an assistant editor on Warren Beatty's Reds. And then sometime in the 80s, she called me up and she said, John, I'm working on this really interesting film that's going to really turn a lot of heads with this director, David Lynch, who I knew of David from The Elephant Man, which I thought it was everything a film should be. And she said the movie is it's called Blue Velvet, and I think you're really going to be hearing a lot about it, which turned out to be true. And then she went on to become an editor on the Twin Peaks series. But editing could be a tedious task, and she called me up in '98 and said, "Hey, John," and I'd done a lot of writing, writing for segments of shows, writing for documentaries, writing for television specials, and also I've written a monthly column in Madison, Wisconsin for the City magazine, just for SNCS. I've done that for 27 years. So if I have a fundamental skill, it is as a writer, although I've done directing and producing and such as well. So she called up and she said, "Hey, I would like to take a whack at screenwriting, and I was wondering if, we could partner together and work on a screenplay." And I didn't hesitate. I said, "Sure, Mayor, that would be really fun," which then begged the next question: what should we write a screenplay about? And she said, "Well, let's just kick it around. Let's keep our minds open to an opportunity." And shortly thereafter, Mary sent me a New York Times article via fax. This was just on the cusp of the internet era, about a New York Times piece about an old man who was driving across Iowa on his riding mower. And so I said, "Well, yeah, that sounds plenty intriguing." And he had his name was Alvin Strait. He had completed his trip. I actually called him up and spoke to him, and he had already signed his rights to his story to two really big Hollywood producers, Larry Gelbart and Ray Stark, who had the MASH and Superman franchises. I believe Stark had the Superman franchise. So these guys were big dogs, and he signed with them. But then that option lapsed after a year, and Mary snuck in and signed the rights. Bless her for that. And so we were kind of off and running on the project.
When you spoke to Alvin, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but when you spoke to him on the phone, is he anything, or was he anything like the character that wound up in the film?
I'm a Midwestern guy, and I worked baling hay on farms, and had encountered guys like this. He was a tough old cob, as we would say. He would test you, but he had a smile in his voice. And I think he was leery of all the media attention he had received toward the end of his ride. And so I felt like he was kind of toying with me on the phone. He'd already signed a deal, and I think he found the media attention humorous. I was able to communicate with him pretty well because I am from the Midwest, and I know these old timers will try to scare you off by being kind of tough or short or brief with you. But if you just hang in there and you're respectful and don't back down, you can connect with them. And I think I was able to. But then the following year, Alvin died before we were able, to talk with him anymore. And so the rights deal was structured with his family. So we really didn't have him as a resource for the film. We learned about Alvin from everyone around him and from everyone he met on the trip.
Well, since both you and Mary are from Wisconsin, what elements did you bring to the story, to the writing of the screenplay?
Well, Nathan, I think the first thing that really spoke to both Mary and myself was our dads. We both had good relationships with our fathers. Our fathers were from, were older guys and not quite as old as Alvin. In fact, I think Alvin was more like my grandfather. But we knew men like Alvin in our lives. And Mary's father grew up on a farm. My dad sold burpee seeds door to door when he was young. He was a baseball player. So we kind of talked about our dads a lot as we were working on the script. And certainly we're familiar with rural America. As you know, Wisconsin is the dairy state, and I think we may have more cows than people. And so everything in our state is infused with, the beauty of the farmlands and the culture of rural America. So that was certainly something that was a part of who we were when we undertook the project.
Was it was it Mary, I guess, who was the entree into David Lynch, having worked on Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks and all these projects with him? What was it about this story that you think that emboldened her, or she thought would be in his wheelhouse?
She never thought it was in David's wheelhouse.
Huh.
David and Mary were significant others by the time we began the script.
Right.
And they ended up having a child together. They lived together in Hollywood, but this was really viewed as an independent project, Nathan. And when we worked, we researched the project both online, and then we traveled the route that Alvin took. Took about 6 or 7 days driving slowly through Iowa and into Wisconsin. And, just observed, and we interviewed people along the way at each one of his stops, or we actually had to kind of figure out where he went and where he stopped. But each interview gave us a clue as to the next place he stopped. It was kind of almost like a documentary sort of component to this. And then I went out to Hollywood and worked in David and Mary's home, which is really a beautiful artist compound. And, did a script outline and then took 8 days to write a very bad first draft. And David was around, and I'm sure he eavesdropped a little bit on us, debating things. But he was not actively involved in the project. He knew that Mary had a passion for it. And so by... I believe we started on the project in early April, and by the end of July, we had a third or fourth draft that we figured was something that we wanted to see if someone could put eyes on, And as a favor, Mary asked David to read it. And it was I remember this pretty well. It was around the 4th of July weekend. I have a cabin in the north woods of Wisconsin, just south of Lake Superior, and I was up there with my family, and Mary called and said, well, David has agreed to read the script, and I'll let you know what his notes are. So then she called the next day, and I said, well, how'd it go? And she goes, well, David has asked us not to show the script to anyone else. And I said, well, that's either very good news or very bad news, Mary. And she said, I don't know. Let's just see what's going on here. So then Mary and David had a home in Madison as well, on one of our beautiful lakes. And I came back down, and they were in Madison, and David and Mary invited me over, and David asked Mary to pick a good bottle of wine, and we opened up and they poured 3 glasses, and David said, John and Mary, I would love the honor of directing your screenplay, which pretty much took my breath away. So they were off and running. Then they went right into location scouting and casting. There was a lot of paperwork and stuff, but from between David decided he wanted to direct the straight story in July, and they were shooting by late September.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people talk about how, Lynch has these, particular views of small town America, and that this is like almost an inverse of something like Blue Velvet. But I mean, is that kind of like, you think, one of the entrees that he looked at in the script, and what he admired about it? Or did he ever tell you, like, or let on, hey, here's what moved me about this story?
Actually, he's spoken about that, Nathan, and he just said that he was touched by the emotion of the script.
Mm-hmm.
And he has said that in some ways it was his most abstract film.
Yeah.
And certainly a curveball for his fans, and move away from what he had done Firewalk with Me, I think, before this, and he was definitely kind of in a Twin Peaks mode. Lost Highway, I think, preceded it. And
yep.
So it was a change of pace. But, in speaking with him, I said, David, this is really different for you. But that's what great artists do. They throw their audience a curveball. And one of the best things to be when you're an artist is unpredictable. It keeps you fresh. And, there's the story where after David had completed the film and they submitted it for rating, the guy said, well, we're going to give you a PG rating. And he told the guy who was in charge of it, he said, you're going to have to say that again because I'm never going to hear it again.
Or G rating even, right?
Pardon me?
It was a G rating even, though, right?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I guess it was G rated, right. And then it ended up being, Disney signed the deal to distribute it domestically, which the opening, when it premiered at Cannes, the opening credit was, Walt Disney Productions, or whatever it might be, presents a David Lynch film, and the whole audience laughed. Because it's pretty surreal to see that. So it was pretty interesting. So I think it's important to say that David is a sweet guy.
Yeah.
And a good guy. And so if you look at Elephant Man, that film just is imbued with compassion. And, needless to say, it was about a strange story, The Elephant Man. But the emotion of that film was pure and real and beautiful. And so David has that soul in his repertoire. And I think the straight story spoke to that part of Dave.
I totally agree. I mean, I was just rewatching Firewalk with Me not long ago, and the empathy for Laura Palmer in that movie is so great that you can really feel the tragedy of her character. And he cares for these characters in his films, and that totally comes out.
David is a caring guy. He's a sweetheart, and anytime he sees you, it's like you're a long lost friend. He does, in fact, I think it's David's innocence that gives him his point of view, because he finds things more shocking than the rest of us. He's not very cynical, I consider him a friend. I knew him before the screenplay. We'd, go sit at taverns and talk. And he's just, I know this may be against type, but I consider him a sweetheart and a good friend, just a good guy and a great storyteller around the corner of the tavern for sure.
I wanted to ask you one of the elements of the screenplay and the story that I like, and if it was a conscious decision of y'all to put this in there, which is that the way that Alvin travels, the people that he meets along his journey seem to be getting progressively older, from a young pregnant teen to the group of guys on bicycles, and then a middle-aged working woman, the one who hits the deer, and then he gets into retirees, and then finally his brother Lyle, who's I guess both of them really are ultimately near death. I mean, was that a conscious decision to have Alvin almost physically address the aging process in a way throughout the movie?
That is an astute observation, and that was not planned. I I gotta say, when you do a screenplay, so many things happen organically, and there may be a reason for it that's working with the writer subliminally, but not consciously. But that's a remarkable observation. I don't even know if anyone's made that observation. But it wasn't a conscious act by Mary or myself or David. Certainly, the when he is reunited with his brother, who was played by Harry Dean Stanton, that was the focal point of the whole trip. And they were two old guys, but no, that wasn't really a conscious thing. I know that he met the older guy in the bar, the World War II veteran scene. That comes later in the film, but no, I mean, that wasn't conscious on our part, and it's a great observation. But I got to tell you, people see things in the film that Mary and I didn't speak of when we were writing it, but and some of it just happens organically, and some of it is the way David chose to, create a scene. I think contributes to that depth of it.
Yeah.
And again, I continue to be surprised what people see in the film, and I think it's I think it's true and authentic. But when you're writing these things, stuff comes out, and you don't know why, and then you don't know why it's in there. Just you're going by feel a lot of the time, and there's a reason for that feeling, that instinct.
And there is some of that, touch that David brings to it, and in not only in terms of the acting style, but the humor. I'm thinking about the scene with the two brothers who are fixing Alvin's lawnmower and bickering over it at the same time, but then Alvin's wit and his wisdom gets the better of them.
Sure.
That's also something that seems very like it belongs in a David Lynch film. Those guys.
Yeah. Well, those were both Chris Farley's brothers.
Yeah.
And they're family friends, Johnny and Kevin Farley, and they did a wonderful job. And I love that scene because Alvin toys with them, also in rural America, people barter for everything, money's tight. And so you just don't automatically pay the bill, especially if you're a smart old guy like Alvin. That scene is very fun. And Mary and I, we were just chuckling at that scene when we were writing it. This film is so much of Mary's work too. She was the producer, the editor, and the screenwriter. And Mary's touch is on this thing. She really contributed a lot to this. And there's a little Irish in that scene. We're both Irish, and there's a little Irish in that.
Well, you hinted on this before when you mentioned the Cannes premiere, but what were your thoughts when you learned that Disney was going to be distributing this picture?
Well, as I recall, it all came down in a tumble. The casting thing was so interesting, and I was honestly, Nathan, I was an innocent bystander. Once the script is written, the pros came in. I mean, I'd been around production my whole life, but I was not in the movie industry. And so it was fascinating to see how the wheels turned and turned quickly. But from what I understand, Mary took the film just before Christmas of '98. She took the film to the jury, the panel in France. And she returned and called and said, well, get ready. Our lives are going to change a little bit because I think we're going to be in competition at Cannes. Now put Diane, your wife, on the phone because I have to tell her what kind of gowns to buy. So that was pretty funny. And then, there's scuttlebutt about the films that sneak out into the industry. And Disney caught wind of the fact that David had done a very interesting film. And so I believe the Disney folks had a screening with David in his screening room, and then the deal came down pretty quickly from there. I think one of the quotes was, "There's nothing about this film I don't like."
Wow.
Yeah, but it was, a surprise to folks. And in hindsight, I don't know if Disney really knew what to do with the film, but I know it just premiered on Disney Plus, so I think there's a new generation of folks who are being exposed to the film, which is great. But yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, the Disney Plus is how I'm able to, I have it queued up for family movie night for my kids and stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to watching.
Tell me what they say about it. Tell me what they say about it.
I will. Well, have you, you had this one experience doing this picture. Have you ever wanted to write another feature film, or
Yeah, actually, Mary and I wrote 3 or 4 more scripts, a couple for actual money, and then 1 or 2 on spec. And then I wrote a solo project myself that got very far down along the line before it realized the fate of most screenplays and wasn't made. But they had directors and talent and everything lined up, and then it kind of, through financing or whatever, kind of went away. So I spent the next almost a decade maybe writing screenplays. But I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and I have a successful company here. I did syndicated television programming, cable programming, and my company has a corporate side of our production as well that works with really big brands. So I wasn't really, and also I'm a Midwest guy. I love living in Madison, Wisconsin, my hometown. We're surrounded by family. So if I had really wanted to be a screenwriter, I would have had to move to Los Angeles, because I think you need to be connected, and you need to connect with directors and producers, with Hollywood lunches and such. And it just was, at the time of my life, it just wasn't a move I was ready to make. My kids were in high school, and it just wasn't practical. And also I had a successful company, so it just, if I really wanted to do it, I would have had to jump in with both feet and move to Hollywood, and it just wasn't something I was considering doing.
Yeah, I get that. Well, gosh, John, thank you very much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. This is just such a magical movie, and I'm glad that I was able to talk to you a little bit more and learn more about it.
Well, I'm just really grateful that Mary thought of me to write with, and she did a wonderful job on it. And I'm really, the whole thing happened because we happened to write a script that turned David Lynch's head. It never would have happened if David didn't see something in the script that he felt he could communicate. So I'm forever grateful to both of them. Everyone who is in the arts longs to do something that will live after they are gone. In some ways, that's what art is about. And I feel pretty good that long after I am dead and gone, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will, get a monthly check for $1.25 for royalties for the movie. And someone will finally say, what are these checks for? And someone will say, well, Great-Grandpa Roach wrote a movie. And they'll say, he did? That's kind of how I view it.
Wow, John, thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
No sweat, Nathan. It was great talking to you, and let me know what your kids think of the film, okay?
I sure will.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. I am curious, what did your children think?
Well, just to give you a little frame of reference for the kids, my kids are 13 and 15 now. I have a boy and a girl. The boy is the younger one. And we had just gotten through with my son's movie pick the day before this, which was Ready Player One. And my son liked the straight story better than Ready Player One, actually, which was really shocking to me since he's all about action in movies. But he liked this. He liked the different episodes of Alvin Straight meeting these people along the way. And he liked the character of Alvin Straight. He thought he was, kind of a funny guy, not quite an old coot fun, but, he enjoyed him as a character. And my daughter liked the movie and especially liked the music by Angelo Badalamenti, which is a beautiful plaintive score featuring I think there's some guitar in there that Badalamenti doesn't normally use, or another stringed instrument. I don't recall at the moment, maybe banjo, but she really, really liked the score a lot as well. Both kids liked it. The whole family enjoyed this very much. I watched it twice, as you can tell, in the course of 1 week, once by myself and then once again with the kids.
And your wife? As long as we're asking?
She liked it too. I meant to say that as well. Yes, we all loved it. She was really blown away by it. Really loved the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I am very glad that you prompted us to watch it. I was, at the end, I don't want to say shaken. That's not the right word, but I was deeply moved by the movie and what it was trying to do and say. And that the closure at the end felt, every movie starts aiming towards some sort of ending and has some sort of, wants an emotional resolution. And I think that this movie earns it in a way that I'm not sure movies always do. It kind of had its mission statement in him, in this very difficult thing he was going to go do that everyone, at home doesn't want him to go do. And people along the way are kind of offering to help to shorten the trip. And, like we said, there's a lot of kindness along the way. And the payoff then at the very end, which is not wordless, but at some point you have the ability for two characters to have a lot of meaningful exchange without a lot of words being passed between them. And fortunately, they have two phenomenal actors in that sequence, and I about gasped when the brother appeared. But it was really, really moving.
Well, when Harry Dean Stanton looks out and sees this John Deere mower that Richard Farnsworth, Alvin Strait rode on in order to come all this way to visit him, the look in his eyes, really, made me tear up, because he's looking at that mower and he's realizing the journey that his brother went on just in order to come and see him, that he went through all this just to come and be next to him. And that emotion really carries over through the screen. And it's something that the Disney people recognize too. And I was always wondering, how on earth did this become a Disney film, right? Because it was an independent production. And so anytime anybody goes, David Lynch and Walt Disney, ha, 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 how did this become a Disney film? Well, as John Roach said in his interview, yes, it was an independent production and Disney picked it up. And I found a quote from the president of the Walt Disney Motion Picture Group from 1999 in Variety when this came out. And Peter Schneider is his name, and he said that this is a beautiful movie about values, forgiveness, and healing, and it celebrates America. And he says, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a Walt Disney film. And that's true. I mean, this is a movie about values and forgiveness and healing. And I can see that as a through line with some of Disney's values that they've wanted to put out on screen as well, most valuable primate notwithstanding.
Well, we're going to do the entire most valuable primate series, I believe, next. So one of the things I thought about a bit when we watched the movie, and something I would expect in interesting you would bring up. I have not actually seen Most Valuable Primate, but I know of which you speak. And I believe we sold it at the record store I worked at years ago. In another director's hands, if there had been lots of studio notes, the emotional payoff, I think, might have been lessened, partially because I don't think they would have been able to keep themselves from saying, just before he gets to his brothers, we have to have like a flood happens and the tractor gets swept away, or he gets hung off the side of a bridge, and the squirrel friend he made along the way has to help him out, or you can just imagine the million scenarios that people would have thought they had to add to this story to make it more cinematic, I guess, is what I'm thinking of.
Yes, either that or too much talking. They would have had to have said, well, they got to have a conversation at the end, and that's not needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a feature-length film, but less is more. And being able to use film as a visual medium, but also kind of the rich oral soundtrack, and everything that are the components of this thing, including Farnsworth's performance, which, I mean, it's, you look at what his IMDb page is, and for years and years and years, I mean, his characters don't even have names when he started in the industry. And he started...
Because he was a stunt guy, right? He was a stunt guy, right, for a while?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's like Third Cowboy, Cow Punch. Like, those are the names of the characters. And then, eventually he was nominated, and I've, of course... researched this, and I have forgotten the name of the movie. I think it was something like Along Comes a Cowboy, something like that. And so that was his big nod, but that was, at this point, I want to say 30 years in the past from when he made Straight Story. But clearly something David Lynch remembered and valued, as he, doing things like bringing back Ann Miller for Mulholland Falls.
Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive, yeah. Mulholland Falls. Drive. But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing that he's seen so many films. He sees things that he values in different actors and finds opportunity to work with them and to get them that last shot. So between Ann Miller and Farnsworth within 2 years of each other, that's pretty remarkable. But yeah, I mean, it's he's going to be remembered by whole new generations thanks to this last role, and see, the ability of, an older actor to really tell a story, that, Hollywood, of course, doesn't value age very often, or casts people who are older in roles that are nowhere near the lead, and so it's amazing to see this kind of story actually told, and to get that kind of chance. And I do think it ends up informing, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of what was on Lynch's mind when he went to go do Twin Peaks: The Return. I just think that...
Well, I can't wait to finally get into some of that. I have not seen any of The Return at all. I mean, people have been talking about it for a few years now, but I haven't seen any of those episodes.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of the kind of pastoral quality that, you weren't able to do on network TV necessarily, especially once they went into the studios in Twin Peaks, that they're able to really pull off on the Showtime series. And there were just some shots that I was like, yeah, I think he learned quite a bit from what he could do with a camera at a distance, that I don't necessarily remember in some of his other work. So again, I really thank you for suggesting this. I really thank you for going off and doing something I never have a presence of mind to do, which is, go talk to the actual creators and filmmakers, and bring that knowledge back, and really looking forward to sharing all of this.
Well, thanks, Ryan, and I promise it won't be as long between the next time I come knocking on your door to do another Disney feature with you. Maybe we'll hit that Most Valuable Primate next time, or something else.
I don't know, man. I might have to hold you to Most Valuable Primate. All right, everybody.
I'll be sure and have a drink beforehand.
Right, that's best enjoyed with a nice shot of bourbon. All right, well, thank you so much, and we will be back with you soon. That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. You can drop comments on this podcast and let us know what you think. We do have a Signal Watch Patreon, and if you're so moved, we'd most certainly appreciate your support. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies. You've got to be kind.